Hello, scumbags, and welcome to this special inaugural episode of Good Will Hunting. And yes, that is Whill with an H.
Good Will Hunting.
I'm Andrew Fantasia, and this is the show where we will tell you everything you've ever wanted or not wanted to know about the Star Wars universe. Consider this your own personal Wikipedia from our mouths. Now, the official episode 1 of Good Will Hunting will be a Patreon exclusive, as will the rest of the series, and you can catch that in just a few weeks. But in the meantime, we wanted to give you this special inaugural preview episode to cover a certain movie that will be releasing May 25th, Solo, A Star Wars Story. What better way to start this show off than by telling you about a certain galactic smuggler who will be making his young big screen debut on May 25th in Solo, A Star Wars Story. So without further ado, let's kick off Good Will Hunting by showing you all about Han Solo.
I got a really good feeling about this.
Han Solo, middle name unknown, possibly Ralph, was born on Corellia approximately 30 years before the Battle of Yavin. From a very young age, Solo displayed an affinity for two things: starship piloting and rebelliousness. Neither of these traits would be of much use when he eventually joined the Rebel Alliance. And by neither, I mean both. Teenage Solo had many an adventure on the mean streets of Corellia, adventures which have not been chronicled in new canon yet. In theaters May 25th. But it was at some point during this time that he turned his back on an empire which his home planet seemed to embrace. Rigid imperial doctrine and implacable structure was not Han Solo's way, and as soon as he was able, he took to the stars to earn his fortune. It was also during this hazy period, which will become much less hazy on May 25th, that Solo met two friends who'd play a big part in the years to come: the mighty Wookiee Chewbacca and the slightly less mighty cape enthusiast Lando Calrissian, middle name unknown, possibly Gambino.
Get down!
Han and Chewbacca's years of space adventuring earned them more than a few enemies. Other smugglers, pirates, bounty hunters, the Empire itself, and even powerful crime lords. One such crime lord was Jabba the Hutt, who employed Solo as a spice smuggler. But an Imperial blockade prompted Solo to dump his cargo, getting him in hot water with the Hutt. Jabba demanded to be compensated for his lost shipment, leaving Solo with an ever-expanding pile of debt. Not long after, destiny came knocking on Solo's door in the form of Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, who TMZ caught getting up close and personal with former Mandalorian Duchess Satine Kryze, but that's a story for another day. The Jedi hired Solo to escort himself, two droids, and some wimpy farm boy to Alderaan. The pay would be more than enough to settle his debt with Jabba, and as we all know, the motto of House Solo is, "A Solo always pays his debts." He agreed to the job and did as he was asked, but Solo didn't count on the Empire's ridiculously massive Death Star superweapon swallowing them up. Before he knew it, Han Solo was entrenched in a crazy plan to rescue a princess. The group escaped the Death Star, minus one Jedi, and made their way to Yavin 4, where the Rebel Alliance was impatiently awaiting their arrival. Being a smuggler, Solo ignored the Rebels' upcoming suicide mission, demanded his payment, and left. But being a smuggler with a heart of gold, he came back a few minutes later. His 11th hour attack on Imperial fighters gave Luke Skywalker the chance he needed to blow up the Death Star and score a victory for the rebellion. From this point on, Solo was, as they say, in it to win it. He couldn't go back to the smuggling world with Jabba's hunters sniffing at his heels, and he had already rocketed to a top spot among the Empire's most wanted lists. The rebellion was the only option left. So Solo spent the next 3 years having not movie-worthy, but totally comic-worthy adventures with his new rebel friends, including attacks on Imperial strongholds, death-defying galactic races, and reunions with old flames from his past. He even managed to take time out of his busy schedule to openly flirt with Princess Leia right in front of her own brother. Not long after their relocation to Hoth, the rebels were discovered by the Empire and had to evacuate. Solo got the princess to safety on his ship and, despite the 3,720 to 1 odds, managed to evade their evil pursuers inside an asteroid field. But Solo didn't count on the bounty hunter Boba Fett, who was as wily as he was handsome. Fett tracked his ship all the way to Bespin, where Solo hoped he could rely on his old buddy, Lando. Long story short, he couldn't. Solo was frozen in carbonite and sent to Jabba the Hutt's palace as a trophy. He was not freed from his icy prison until almost a year later, somehow wearing different clothes than he had when he first got frozen, which is totally just proof that the Force is real, you guys! With the considerable weight of Jabba finally off his back, Solo was free to put all his effort into one final assault against the Empire. He led a strike team on the forest moon of Endor with the intent of blowing up a shield generator that protected the orbiting Death Star 2. But the generator's location had been freely leaked by Palpatine, and the rebels on the moon were walking into a trap. The rebellion prayed Solo could overcome his enemies and complete the mission. Long story short, he could. Thus began 30 years of other not-movie-worthy adventures. After the Battle of Endor, Solo married Princess Leia and requested permission to land in her docking bay. 9 months later, she gave birth to Ben Solo. Middle name unknown, possibly non-existent. Now, on top of all his New Republic duties, Solo had to deal with a whole new challenge: fatherhood. As young Ben's Force powers manifested, he spent more and more time with his uncle Luke, training to be a Jedi Knight. But tragedy struck, mistakes were made, and Ben turned to the dark side. This terrible turn of events crippled Han and Leia's marriage, and the two found themselves drifting apart. With the First Order rearing its ugly head and showing aspirations of galactic conquest, things looked bleak. Then every father's nightmare came true. Solo found out his son had let his hair grow long and started a gang of unruly troublemakers, breaking windows and loitering and refusing to pay for sodas, all in the name of the First Order. 34 years after the Battle of Yavin, Han and Chewbacca were running a smuggling job for King Prana when they located their long-missing ship, the Millennium Falcon, floating through space above Jakku. The ship had been stolen by a couple of plucky teenagers and their droid, who begged Solo to escort them to General Leia Organa's resistance. Despite knowing that this would lead to some awkward dinner conversations with his estranged wife, Solo eventually agreed. Then his son and those no-good friends of his blew up a handful of Republic planets and kidnapped young Rey, which really steamed Han Solo's beans. For the first time in years, the old smuggler was back on the military side of things, volunteering for a suicidal mission to rescue a friend from an enemy superweapon before blowing it to pieces because poetry. While on board the superweapon, Solo came face to face with his son. "Cut your damn hair and get a real job," he said. But young Ben disagreed. "No, my new friends actually understand me and treat me with respect. Plus, the Supreme Leader lets me stay up as late as I want." Unfortunately, like anyone who's lost a loved one to cults or pyramid schemes, Solo knew that nothing he could say would make his son see reason. He tried protesting one more time, but Ben had had enough. He ignited his lightsaber, plunging the weapon into his father's chest. In his last moments of life, Han Solo stroked his son's cheek and toppled off of the very precarious catwalk where they'd chosen to have this conversation. His final thoughts before being swallowed by the endless abyss were, "I just hope the Resistance gives me a decent funeral." And that, fellow scumbags, is the very abridged story of Han Ralph Solo. Smuggler, pilot, scoundrel, rebel, nerf herder, friend. And you can find out more about that story and fill in all the little blanks by checking out Solo, A Star Wars Story in theaters, May 25th.
I heard a story about you. I was wondering if it's true.
Everything you've heard about me is true.
If you want to see more Good Will Hunting, please feel free to support us on Patreon, and you can check out the rest of the series in its entirety when it debuts in just a few short weeks. Until then, thank you so much for watching. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with you.
Good. Will Hunting.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.